Everybody, welcome back to the Insiders Lounge. Today we have another episode and another special guest, but this episode is going to be a little bit different. Ethan, first of all, thank you for coming on once again. I'll get you to introduce yourself quickly, and then we'll kind of dive into what we're getting into today.
Yeah, for sure. It's great to be back. I'm Ethan. I work at Octagon, which is a sports agency, work on the marketing side of our business, and I focus on soccer and golf, so it's kind of right in my wheelhouse. I also do my master's program, which I'm about to graduate from at Georgetown, and also create some content about the sports business world on the side. So it's kind of a perfect blend, and I'm excited to be back.
No, I appreciate it. Not a lot of people get the second invite, so you should feel like that means a lot. No, I'm kidding, but no, it's good. I think we've been discussing this for, I would say, at least a few weeks now in terms of, or from my side, I've been thinking about, okay, how can we kind of get involved into more of the, I always say the podcast is really the intersection of soccer and business. I think we both have fascinations with just sports business as a whole. And I think a lot of these topics kind of cover, although they're soccer related, there's kind of inlets all around the sports industry as a whole. And I've really been wanting to dive into more of the current topics, what's going on now, what's happening, and just give our general kind of point of view, our perspective. I think everyone has a different point of view. But as two younger people working within the sports business industry, specifically, I would say in the soccer space with your side, I think a little bit more general, we can really just dive into some of the interesting topics going on, the conversations going on on LinkedIn, on TikTok, Instagram, you name it, whatever it is. And I think the perfect way to get started from our North American perspective, I would say, is obviously Wrexham making the news once again. I feel like they haven't really left the news since Ryan Reynolds has got in there and Rob as well. I think it's just been constantly one thing after the next, whether it's the announcement of the documentary, them getting promoted, not once, not twice, but 3 times now in a row. The metrics in terms of the financial point of view. So I think from your side, if you just want to kick things off with, if someone's somehow never heard of Wrexham, if we just want to give a quick breakdown of like what is actually going on, what's significant about it, and then we can kind of break down some of the more current topics of their most recent promotion and some of the financials that have come out now that are just absolutely absurd numbers.
Yeah. So we have Wrexham. I don't know what you're doing if you haven't heard of them yet, but they're flying up through the ranks of English soccer, and they're doing so not just because they found the secret key to unlocking the game on the pitch, but because they've had massive media success and a massive amount of investment because of that media success, which has kind of given them the funds, given them the exposure to recruit, even better players than maybe their competition can. And then they've put it together on the pitch, flew up the ranks. They've now had 3 straight promotions and will just sit 1 league behind the Premier League next season. So they're in a prime position. The numbers, like you mentioned, are absolutely crazy. The 2 owners we have are obviously pretty famous here with Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney. There's also investment now from the Allen family. Huge there for them. So back in 2021, Ryan Reynolds and Rob purchased the team for $1.8 million. $1.8 million, which is a lot. And a lot of us would like to have $1.8 million, I think. But when you see how much it's grown, it feels like nothing. They're generating $26 million annually now in revenue. Wild to think about. And I did see they've put $11 million into it. So in addition to that $1.8 million that they purchased for. Mm-hmm. So, put that into consideration. But now, the valuation's grown to over $100 million, and that metric's from before they earned the promotion. So you expect that has gone up even more now, which is a over 4,900% increase in just 4 years. 4,900%. That's shocking.
And I think to give a little bit of context in terms of the 1.8 million, I think it's £1 million, but yeah, £1 million, $1 million, around that range. I think to give some context, like this wasn't an obvious investment. This wasn't something like, hey, just give us $2 million and we'll kind of, it'll guarantee you a couple $100 million down the line, or at least an evaluation of a couple $100 million. This was like a National League team who I think the last time they played in the championship, I think I saw the figure was 1980 or 1981, somewhere around there. Yeah, and they were in the National League. Like, this is borderline semi-professional soccer or football in the UK. And even from I wouldn't say I had a ton of information in terms of like understanding Wrexham's background and where they came from, but just in terms of the documentary and what I've been able to see, it didn't look like they were in a good state whatsoever. Like, this is a club in Wales. I think Welsh clubs that are playing in the English system don't necessarily have the greatest infrastructure compared to some of the English teams. I think Swansea would be the other fairly big name, and is Cardiff the other one? I think is the third one that is Welsh. I think it's involved. And so, yeah, please fact check me while I continue talking here. But yeah, I think just a fascinating investment in terms of, look, you're taking two Americans that really, I would say neither of them had any clue in terms of the soccer industry as a whole, like especially learning the story of how they first got introduced to the idea of taking over a team. And then just all the unique aspects, like obviously without the documentary, without the following that they both have, like you're just not getting to where you are today. And I think that's where you're starting to see some of the negative feedback in terms of people are starting to look at this as maybe from an American perspective, like, oh, we just need $2 or $3 million and we can go over to the UK, buy a team, and all of a sudden in 3 or 4 years we're going to have this team in the Championship, in the Premier League, so on. I think this is an extremely unique case, and I think that has to be almost the asterisk or the PS at the bottom so that people clarify that, because I think this won't necessarily happen again. I think you're seeing the likes of Birmingham do something fairly similar, although they don't have the documentary and all that goes behind it, but they have this Tom Brady figure. They have things that are kind of comparable to what Wrexham have done. But I think one of the big things, like I would say the negative outlooks on it is, look, this can't just be something that people just go, oh, this is common, like we can just go and do that. And I think that would hurt not only the English pyramid, but also the US perspective on football as a whole, because if you have multiple ownership groups going over and trying to do something similar, I think it could hurt both sides.
Yeah, I think if there's anyone that thinks that they can go do it, go give it a try. But there's a reason that, it's been 4 years now, nobody else has tried to do this. And it's because like the people that, have that access to funds and are, have their finger on the pulse, know that it's not something that can easily be replicated. But it is like, the concept isn't necessarily a new thing, right? Like you see this in other sports, other, completely different situations, but, you have full swing with the tour and Netflix, the same sort of premise as that with the F1 series. And it's the idea that if you can give, the fans closer access to the players, to the, participants in the sport, allow them to learn about their personalities, become closely tied with the intricate stories that maybe aren't coming across on a TV broadcast, you can get a lot more investment from a fan perspective and just kind of drive all those things that we're seeing Wrexham do.
Yeah, I think you were seeing, like in the early days, you were getting I think they still have TikTok as a sponsor, Expedia, all these brands that really no National League team should ever have on their jersey, or a deal that's definitely not in their favor, but I'm sure in this case it was in their favor. And even from my side of things, like I just love Ryan as who he is from before, whether it's Deadpool or even just what he was doing. I think he did Mint Mobile as well, which is a really interesting acquisition from his point of view of like just bringing Ryan as the personality into a brand and just almost rejuvenating it into this new life of like, okay, people just fall in love with the brand because of who I am, and then kind of continue that and flip it. I think he did flip Mint Mobile to T-Mobile, if I wasn't mistaken. And I think this is a similar situation. I'm curious from your point of view, do you think this will be something where it becomes almost like a lifestyle or a legacy brand for them, where they just continue to run it for many years to come? Or do you think they get to maybe, whether it's the Championship next year, or maybe they try and push for the Premier League and then look to flip it into new ownership or kind of sell off? I think similar to what's happened with the Allen family, where they're starting to kind of let go of some of their ownership. I'm curious what you think from your side of things.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're starting to see like a staggered exit, but the growth potential, they've grown 4,900% now. There's no reason that they couldn't do another 1,000% at least, right? From the evaluation now. Yeah. If you make it to the Prem, I mean, everything changes, right? So I would be shocked if they exited before that. You get so close. They have the money now with the Allen family, to invest in, all the things that are going to be required to succeed at this level. just like they've done in all the other steps along the way. And so, that puts them in a prime position. I think they got to chase the ultimate goal, right? Make it to the Prem, see if they can compete. And I think they would give it, a number of years in the Premier League too, just to see, can we establish this as a Premier League club? I mean, that's an incredible investment. They've already done the hard part. Getting.
I think Ryan said he was like, what's stopping us now from becoming the best club in the world? And I was like, if I had kids one day and they're like, Wrexham's my favorite team because they're the best in the world, it would just be like a complete mind blow.
Yeah, like the reason we like United and City, they're liking Wrexham.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd be shocked if they left soon. I think the bigger question is, can they actually succeed now? Relatively, they're playing with small fish in the leagues that they've won so far or, advanced through. Now you're getting into ownership groups and brands that rival or are bigger than the brand that Wrexham has. And so maybe the brand now is less of an advantage. Can they actually, continue to keep up? I think that's the bigger question.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. The one thing I do see where there's still maybe outside of the sporting side of things, I think they still have the infrastructure that they can improve. So the stadium's going up now. I think they started at 13,000 capacity. Now they're going up to 50 or 60. I think it's 55,000, which is like a full blown Premier League stadium, which is absurd. Then you can obviously improve. You have the academy. I'm sure they would have a focus on a women's team. I think that's almost the perfect transition here into some of the next topics. But I think focusing on the women's side of things, I think they've already kind of nailed down the American approach of expanding internationally, but how can they continue to do that? I think we're going to talk about TST later, which they were one of the early adopters of. And I think you already have the documentary series. I'm just thinking of the other day, I was looking at the Disney outline map of how Disney kind of expanded into many different sectors. And I think that's what Wrexham will become. It'll become more than just a footballing club, which I think a lot have stayed as. I think if they can start to expand in a lot of those other avenues, then that's where you can bring the value. Yeah, the valuation is just going to be, if it hit 5,000%, I don't even know how you start to begin with that. So yeah, definitely be interesting interesting watch for both of us.
Yeah, the US piece, just before we move on, such an interesting one, because more and more, I mean, we've seen it over the past 20 years even, but especially now, a lot of clubs are investing in American players, coming over here to play preseason matches because there's a recognition of the market that the United States represents from a consumer perspective, and they don't have to worry about that probably ever again. They can continue to expand and grow, but they're, lead the pack already because of how successful the documentary has been. So I think that's also one of those unique advantages that might play into whether they're able to succeed at this level or not.
I was listening to a podcast and it was an advisor for, I'm trying to think, I think it was one of the Premier League clubs. And they did this almost outreach program where they went across the US and just interviewed people on their favorite clubs just to get an idea of okay, what was I'm sure you've seen the metrics before on Reddit or so on, where you see each state and kind of who their most popular player is or club. And so for the players, for example, you see Lionel Messi, you'll see Christian Pulisic as the favorite player for that state. And so in this case, they did clubs. And I want to say he was a part of a top 4 or 5 clubs. So a Man United, a Chelsea, something like this. And they end up doing this whole test to see, okay, kind of where do they gauge in terms of the US? Because the US was one of their focus points. And so there was a lot of Inter Miami. There was a lot of Man United, Real Madrid, Barcelona. But then I think that the club that finished 3rd overall in terms of the US was Wrexham. And he was like, what is going on? What is this club? He didn't even know who they were from an advisory standpoint. And he's like, that's when I realized, okay, we have to take focus on what they're doing. And I'm sure Premier League clubs are looking at what Wrexham are doing and, okay, how can we implement what they're doing? I think similarly, if #United, fairly similar approach on a smaller level, but I'm sure these bigger clubs are looking at them okay, their social media metrics, at least for one thing, are in line with what we're doing. How can we improve on what we've done? So yeah, definitely an interesting one.
Some of those more documentary style productions going on, what who was it that just did the Boston Celtics one? I think it was Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
you see other clubs maybe start to do that and start to try and build that fan connection we were talking about at the beginning that Wrexham has built through their documentary. Get more American investment. But it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and I don't think you need like a big club like a Man United or a Liverpool or so on. Like Hashtag United is a great example of, look, it started with a guy vlogging. Spencer Owen was really just vlogging those first games and giving his commentary, and then built it up to what it is now. I think they're almost pushing in to be League Two. I think they're just one or two leagues below, which is also an incredible feat. So I think you can really start at any level. Sunderland did the same, where their documentary basically became popular for how bad they were doing. Like the reality was they just kept getting relegated and not getting to where they wanted to be. And people found that entertaining. So I think no matter where your club is, you can always kind of find a different point of view.
Yeah, definitely.
Should we transition? I think we mentioned the women's side of things. I think especially in the UK, we've got a few interesting points to touch on. The first being, I would say I saw this within the last week for sure. And there's been a few updates since of Wolves women's team blocked from promotion. So unfortunately, to kind of give clarification on the situation, they finished second in their league, I believe it was, within the championship of the women's divisions.
The third.
Yeah. Oh, third league going into the second. Got it. And so they didn't actually have the chance to get promoted, but either way, their ownership had blocked they hadn't actually done the application process to get promoted. Am I correct with that line of thinking?
If they won the last match, they would have been promoted. But before the game, the team found out that even if they won, the ownership didn't fill out the required paperwork to apply for promotion. And so even if they won the game, they weren't getting promoted. And it was like a devastating blow to the team, obviously. Mm-hmm. The morale there, not great for team morale.
No, not at all. So I think to kind of give a bigger point of view, I would say I've seen quite a few articles I would say over the last year or two of just struggles within the UK women's football scene due to, I would say there's a big gap between sort of your big clubs, and that's not necessarily, I'm not saying Premier League clubs, because you're seeing a Wolves, for example, in the third division. I think Newcastle also plays second or third division. There are quite a few of the bigger clubs that have teams down there. And it's very much, I even saw, I think Wolves owner was quoted, and I'm not going to say that it was quoted just in case it wasn't, but I saw it, I think it was a Sky Sports article where he said it was basically just a participation thing where they just want to be a part of the women's game. And that's sort of how he saw that investment. So for them to move forward in making it a professional team, it's almost a lost cause, because they're not trying to invest that much. They're really just having it as a, hey, yes, we have a women's team. Now, can you guys kind of leave me alone? That's sort of where that's at. Where I think what we'll get to in the women's side of things in the US is it's very much this like overall push of, look, let's all do this together. Let's make this as successful as possible. And I think the UK is struggling to have that kind of like united push of, okay, let's all do this together and build in something. So I don't know if you want to drop some of the key details regarding the Wolves side of things. Then we can kind of go into the further discussion of women's football as a whole.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing and the underlying theme here is women's soccer from a UK perspective. Do they think that women's soccer is worth investing in outside of the top level? And so here we're saying, the owner, to run a second tier full-time team, the article says $1.3 to $2 million per year. This guy, owner of Wolves, obviously doesn't think it's worth that investment. And then the next topic, which we can get more into later, but Sky Sports, big coverage over there. They're going to broadcast the first ever second tier women's match for the final between Birmingham City and London City next week. So you have such parity, right? Like, you have Sky Sports here. We're talking about the same league, the second league. They're willing to, pour some money into this, broadcast the game. Owner Wolves not willing to even enter the league, right? So I think that's kind of where we're at. Is it worth it or is it not? What's the potential? And I think it's really interesting. For me, I think it's worth investing in. Obviously working, within the space in the United States, something that I think is worth investing in. Certainly, there's not as much financial, sort of evidence yet. But we see it starting to come, but it's not a 10 or 20 year track record like you have maybe with the men's league, obviously. But I feel like the UK, you've seen success in the United States, and in the UK you have a very distinct advantage of the tradition. And, players growing up in the United States, even though the United States women's leagues have been more successful, are interested in going and playing in England because there's a tradition of English football. And I feel like not taking advantage of that is a big miss on their part.
Yeah, I think just from the financial side of things, I pulled up some articles here. So we have the team currently costing $400,000 annually. When you're speaking about the Wolves side, for example, on the men's team, that is literally maybe 2 or 3 of your top players' weekly wages, and that's the cost of the whole women's team for the entire year. So I think to say, look, this is really hurting our pockets, we don't know if we can do this, like we just don't see it being a wise investment. Like that's really difficult to say. So I think it equals to 0.2% of Wolves' total wage bill, right across the board of the club. So to say like, hey, look, we're looking at it like, I think from your and I's perspective, we see the WNBA doing a really good job. We're seeing all these like kind of different entities within the women's space that maybe they're not producing this like crazy profit margin or extremely high levels of revenue, but you're starting to see, look, it's starting to turn over where it actually makes sense to invest in women's sports. From an actual investment point of view, not from the fan point of view. I think the fan point of view is a no-brainer no matter what. So then if that's what you're seeing, like why not just take the risk, take the little step to do this? And I think in the UK especially, like you mentioned, you've got the traditional aspect of football always being a part of their culture, but you're also seeing, like, I think this Wolves as a case study is almost encouraging for teams that are really investing in women's sports, because you're like, look, even top teams are still not there yet in terms of wanting to invest. So if you do invest, you stand out even further. And I think is it London City Lionesses is the full name? Yeah. They're doing an incredible job where they're an independent team. They don't even have a men's team to kind of rely on in terms of an investment point of view and bring revenue in from one direction and kind of split it up. They're solely onto just women's sports. And I think they're doing an incredible job and are now being rewarded for it. Sky Sports, that's a big opportunity for them to showcase, okay, this is who we are. This is what we believe in. And I think they stand out from the perspective of people who haven't seen women's sports or seen women's football, especially in the UK. They see, oh, what's London City Lionesses? Let's dive into that a little bit further. Oh, it's based in London. Oh, we have a women's team here that's fully supported, like fully run. Like that's interesting, and I think that brings in a fan in a new perspective.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing is, like, you look at the numbers, trying to justify it. There's not as many fans for the women's game yet, but from a sponsorship perspective, the women's fans and basically in general, the brands that sponsor women's clubs are seeing a much higher return than brands that sponsor men's clubs, because the fans of the female clubs have a stronger affinity to purchase from sponsoring brands than what we're seeing in the men's game. So there's clear evidence that there's a lot of passion for it. I think that's what it is to me. These people are one, super tied in so that the brand is making an impression on them, and two, want to support the people that are supporting them and that are supporting something that they're passionate about. So I think Sky Sports is doing the right thing, and I think Wolves might be missing the mark a little bit.
And I think from a content creation point of view, women as a whole are also much more engaged with, in terms of whether it's a sponsored content piece or even just their regular content. They're just much more engaging. So I think you're getting both sides of it. You're getting the fans are engaging more, and the actual athlete turned content creator, because that's really what they're starting to become more and more now. They're more engaged with. So women's sports as a whole is a really appealing place now for commercial sponsorships, for brand partnerships, that sort of space. And I think teams will start to realize that as, okay, we can even start to increase the cost of what these partnerships will be, so that we can help build our team and actually make it something that's profitable. But even if you look at the men's side isn't really profitable in most cases. So maybe it's not necessarily something that has to be profitable. It's really just, okay, look, we're doing something to better the world as a whole, which I think is in many cases, like if you're looking at a legacy project, that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective, but I think it's a good one. So
should we can dive into, I think the NWSL side is interesting, but I think this is also leading me to the TST point of view where they've also opened up the women's side. I think last year was the first year where they really had it fully going. Maybe let's go to TST because I think you have a lot of insight from that side of things as well. I believe it's 16 women's teams this year and then an additional 48 men's teams, right?
Yeah, they doubled the field for the women's tournament. Last year was just $8 million prize for both of them, which is a big thing, from the women's sports group, the crowd. I think there's a lot of appreciation for that from both the players, staff involved, just supporters of women's sports in general. So cool thing that they did. Interesting this year, RBC Heritage, the bank, backing the $1 million prize for the women this year. So like you see that sponsorship, like we're talking about, people are recognizing it. But yeah, TST in general, we can give like a brief overview. 77 tournament. It's in Cary, North Carolina, 5 days, ton of matches. You have a group stage elimination, all leading up to a championship game for $1 million. Winner takes all. And it's now, they live stream every game on YouTube, but also ESPN has come back as a partner this year that are going to be broadcasting some of the bigger games, the final games. You have Pat McAfee comes, does a show there. I see a ton of, big celebrity names, social media presence, all these things kind of culminating in. And TST's whole goal is to make it like a soccer festival. So beyond even what's going on the pitch, they're providing a high level of access for fans to have like personal interactions with players, whether it's through meet or greets or just the intimate setting of the smaller sided format. And then also, a lot of brands, clubs are coming in and they have like a, fan zone sort of set up with activities, music, food, all these things. It's really cool. I got to go last year. I'll be back again this year. I feel like not everybody knows about it yet. It's not like a huge thing, but the people that go like it, which is always a good sign. And we'll see how it grows.
I'm curious from your perspective. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time now. The overall kind of niche soccer space. So this like Kings League, Baller League, TST, you're seeing more and more of these pop up, and you're starting to see them expand now where like Kings League has gone into Germany, which is kind of where Baller League started. Baller League's gone into the UK. They're all kind of trying to get involved in the US, but TST's already here as like a similar format. Where do you see all this going? Like from my perspective, I think it'll eventually monopolize where one will just kind of succeed the rest and take it all over. But I would love to see this. I think competition is healthy in any perspective. So I think when we get back into the women's conversation, I think having NWSL, having USL Super League, having the UK scene and the European footballing space as a whole, the more competition you have, the more competitive each competitor becomes. So then it increases the quality, not only the quality of play, but also the commercial side, the media side, all these avenues that come with it. So from your perspective, where do you see things going in terms of this like kind of niche footballing space, the outside of the general football that we see day to day?
Yeah, I'll preface by saying that I haven't thought about this yet, but just from your little overview, how cool would a circuit be, right? Like where you have TSTs in June, you have another event in September, one in November, and maybe you put one in like March or April. And because I think one of the limiting factors for TST as far as, when you're having a tournament, you want to have quality on the field. There's all of the, I don't want to call them gimmicky, but like revolutionary rules to try and make it more fast paced, more entertaining. At the end of the day, like there has to be quality on the field. And one of the things that they struggle with is that a lot of these teams don't play together throughout the rest of the year because this is the one tournament, right, of this format in the United States. There's some teams that are, like they're playing futsal together or they used to play together. So there's some familiarity. And you see those teams usually do well, have an advantage when it comes time for the tournament. But if you had a circuit, you could, have a team that plays for a whole year together. Maybe, have a couple guys rotating in and out, but I think that'd be really cool. I think The biggest
I think
thing,
that's
though,
your golf mind talking. I can
yeah.
start to hear your golf mind. Like, okay, we have the U.S. Open, we got the Miami Open, we got all these different ones.
Let's get the 4 majors in. Yeah, we can have a weekly tournament for everybody else. Yeah, it is. It's kind of a blend, but it's a proven model, right? So we love that. We love that in business, a proven model. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is getting the quality up. And if the other thing is, can TST serve as a launch pad? I think it's like another interesting question when you're trying to get, right now you see a lot of teams are retired players. A lot of teams are academy kids. And then you have some that are, kind of fused together or playing semi-pro. So there's a ton of different compositions, but it'll be cool to see, like, over the next 5 years, are there players that played in TST that have made it, to an MLS or have made it to even the top league for USL, that have kind of used TST to catapult their careers, because it is an opportunity to showcase yourself. Like, nobody's watching the indoor futsal league, but if you come out and your team shines and you're playing the championship match on ESPN, that's crazy increase in exposure for these guys. So it is like a unique opportunity from that state. And if they can prove that, people that play in TST are making it, using this as a springboard for their career, that makes it such a better pitch to get talented players to come participate, which I think, just continues to grow it. Obviously, like, most of the big names that play in the tournament now are retired players, right? Nani, Aguero, who are some of the other, we'll see who Bournemouth announces that's going to come from them. But I think that's the question, is the question for how far it can go comes down to how can they get the quality players participating, because they do a great job. The Fan Fest, awesome. They're getting good social media personalities. They're bringing in, like, relevant soccer brands. You have Tactical Manager this year. Drip FC is participating. You're getting global exposure with, the Dortmunds, the Inter Milan was there last year. Your Nanis, Agueros, etc. But at the end of the day, like, how can they get talented players to participate and showcase them to help them, see it as a worthwhile investment? I think it's a big question.
Yeah, I think it's something I don't want to keep kind of dragging it away from TST, but something Baller League is doing really well, where they have kind of this general player base of each team is made up of high level players, whether they're coming from National League. There's even some, like, guys that have just recently retired from, like, a League One or a Championship, even the Premier League and so on, that are playing in it. So it keeps it extremely high level. But those aren't necessarily names that are going to draw a crowd or draw an audience on global kind of television or YouTube, wherever they're streaming it. But then they have these kind of one-off characters that will come in for one game. So Troy Deeney, for example, has come in from Watford, and with his kind of niche UK following or European following, maybe someone from the US isn't going to tune in to watch Troy Deeney, but at least brings that kind of extra element to it, where someone will go, "Oh, Troy's playing tonight. Okay, let's watch it." I think that's sort of what they can do. That if TST builds on this kind of circuit model that you're discussing, which I would really like, and I think more than one location would also be cool. Like, I think if you did something like that in San Diego, for example, one part of the year, especially when it's a little bit cooler or something like that, then you're bringing, like, a whole new demographic in terms of the local kind of surrounding area, but then also changing things up where you maybe have this kind of standard roster of, okay, these players will almost always play. And then you have these guest appearances from whether it's former US men's national team players or women's national team players, or I think that the professional side is a little bit difficult. You can't really get involved there with bringing professional players in, but finding these other personalities that can actually bring an audience. But I think from an overall perspective, they've done a really good job at finding a niche within a niche. I think they are different to Baller League and Kings League, where they're very much more promotional and media centric. And I think for the international crowd, where you have, like you mentioned, Bournemouth, Villarreal, Dortmund, a lot of these teams are trying to make a presence in the US, and this is a fantastic way to do it. I think
exactly what we were talking about with Wrexham.
Exactly. Where, yeah, Wrexham's another team that's done it really well. Hashtag United also a part of it, where, like, the first that comes to mind is Dortmund having Noah Beck as a part of their team. Like, what a perfect combination between a US well-known household name, especially with the TV show and everything now, where he's kind of expanded past his his soccer background, but has the soccer background and has the connection to Dortmund. And now they're kind of bringing all that together. I've seen their partnerships now with, I think it's World Soccer Shop and soccer.com. So a lot of these brands are a part of this, and this is another avenue for them to kind of expand and grow into things.
Yeah, it'll be really cool to see. I mean, this is just year 3, which is, you know, a crazy thing about it. Still, this is 100% a startup company. And they've had TBT for a little while longer. And you see how that has expanded now, multiple locations, host sites, you know, things like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
The only other thing that comes to mind is like what do they actually call it? Footy golf, where they, you know, like where you play on a golf course with the soccer ball. Yeah. Like I'm starting to the ideas are starting to roll now. I think there's imagine having that where you have a partner where it's almost like a pro-am. You have some sort of former ex-footballer and some celebrity. I think that combination, I'm thinking of the personalities, the Kai Sinats, the speeds with like someone like a Landon Donovan or a Tim Howard. Like I think there's so much potential. I think that's what the US offers, where there's so much where you can go and expand into these different niches, and people will watch. At the end of the day, if you find the right mix of personality and entertainment, I think anyone will follow. So it'll be interesting to see where the space goes. But this summer, what dates did you say, just in case people are looking for it? Do you know the rough?
June 4th through the 9th, championship games on June 9th. So that'll be on ESPN. If you want to come in person, it's in Cary, North Carolina. And the first couple of days, honestly, it's during the week. So, you know, that ices people out from work, but you can see so many matches, see all these, you know, cool historic players, really up close and personal. So June 4th through the 9th, Cary, North Carolina.
And the perfect warm up before Club World Cup starts. I think the Club World Cup's on either the 13th or the 14th. So heading into it, I think before we go on to some of the next topics here, I want to quickly cover. We spoke about the NWSL and kind of what they had to offer. Obviously, bringing in a second division. I had this conversation not too long ago on the podcast, and I mentioned it here earlier, where the more competition we can bring in these spaces is truly the best way to improve the product right across the board. And I think bringing in a second division is a good little comeback to what the USL Super League did not too long ago, where I think it was last year they kind of made, I would say around this time, they made the announcement that the league was coming. And it's a first division league as well. So really a direct competitor with the NWSL. Now the NWSL sort of counters that with saying, hey, look, we're going to make a second division, bring in, I don't think there's going to be promotion or relegation or anything like that, but at least have that second division presence alongside, I think Canada's Northern Super League has come out as well recently now, where they've just started their season. So I think I would say overall, where we're starting to see maybe some lack or some areas where they are lacking in the UK in terms of, we've just discussed Wolves, obviously Sky Sports is positive, but I think the US as a whole just has this thing about, look, we're just going to compete and try and make this the highest level possible. And it's an exciting time, I would say, especially in the women's space. Yeah.
And you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think their goal is to kind of model a system like MLS is doing, right? So MLS has MLS Next Pro, and MLS Next. And the MLS Next Pro teams, 85% of them are affiliated with an MLS club. And that kind of helps them with their funding. And also kind of drives interest, right? Because you're watching the next generation of your team, right? Charlotte FC obviously is my local team, and there's, you know, 3 or 4 guys now that are getting significant minutes, headlined by Agumong, who's, you know, playing for the national team now, crazy, who was a standout on the second league team. So I think that's a cool model to go off of. I think it is interesting. It's like MLS and NWSL have been lumped together now versus all of USL. And you have this big competition, which is a whole nother thing we could dive into. But yeah, it's exciting and it's good. You know, it's encouraging to see they're not really getting complacent with just having some success with the first team. Like, they want to keep growing this, turn it into a bigger thing in the United States. I think it's good for soccer, good for women's sports in general. So.
Yeah, I think the one thing that was lacking, I would say, in the women's sports scene was that jump from like, okay, academy to getting to the professional level. I think you had like USLW, which was sort of that kind of semi-pro step of, okay, people can start to get an understanding of the level and where you have to be at. But it was very much like, okay, you're going through the academy, all of a sudden you're playing NWSL, which I would say is a pretty big step considering the level of NWSL. So I think having this now as like that area where some of those younger kids, because you're seeing some of these girls are coming through, and I thought like Kevin Sullivan was young coming into the MLS. You're seeing some of these girls coming through with the NWSL, 14, 15 years old, already making first team debuts. Like that's good and encouraging for the overall development of the game and of those players specifically. But I think also from a life perspective, it's extremely hard for a 14, 15-year-old to be able. I've heard of where they have to dress in a separate dressing room and they can't train certain times of the day, and you have all these different rules that is extremely difficult on the physical and mental side of a young person in general. So I think having this step as something where those sort of that age group of players can now kind of get adapted into the game and so on, and new markets as well. So not only, I think almost every team will have a second division team, but then they'll also be bringing in new markets. From your side, I'm starting to brainstorm. What are some new markets you would like to see for the women's space? Is there any that come to mind? I'm gonna think as well as I'm asking you.
Needs one, but then you see like the people who have failed bids. I think that's the first place you look, right? So like Columbus was bidding for an expansion team.
Oh, I see.
Get it. Cincinnati was bidding for an expansion team, didn't get it. And then I'd also try and piggyback off of the MLS clubs, right? So like Nashville would be a good one. Have great attendance. Atlanta.
I was going to say Atlanta if they.
It's huge attendance. And, doesn't have any women's soccer presence right now. I think that would be my strategy if I was in their shoes. Go to places where you have some proven, at least soccer interest, and find places that, if you have cities and, sports groups that are wanting to invest in it, that is such a huge component. And, people that have shown interest, they'd be my first call.
And I think what's interesting, I think, as well with this overall race for land and competition is like you have the USL very much going into the kind of those niche markets. So those secondary markets, like in the women's side, I'm thinking of Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, the Carolinas, where they're not going into those major metropolitan cities. And MLS and NWSL they've gone that route. They've gone to the big New Yorks, the LAs, and so on. So I think them continuing that tradition of a Charlotte or Atlanta would be just absolutely mental for, I think, not only have they nailed down the premise of having a men's team there, but I think the women's team would just bring like a totally different level of excitement. It could be really, really, really promising in this case.
I 100% agree. And it would also be interesting to see how much they expand too at the top level, right? Like what is this?
What do you mean by that?
Why does Charlotte not get a NWSL team? Why does Atlanta not get an NWSL team? I don't know why there hasn't been a push for that yet, but I'd be shocked if the NWSL expands to 30 teams like MLS has. There's got to be one in Charlotte and Atlanta, right? So you wonder if there will be any pushback from teams that are like, oh, we don't want the second team because we want to make a push for a first team. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a revolving door in many ways. I think the conversation is definitely at an interesting point. I think this next topic that I wanted to bring up from my point of view as a Liverpool fan, watching the game last weekend, I'll kind of give you the premise of it. I'm sitting there. My mom's become a huge Liverpool fan as well, so we normally sit and watch the games together. And as soon as it was always kind of known, look, Dominic Solanke scored the first goal, so we were all a little bit worried. But at the end of the day, we knew Liverpool was going to come back and make it a day to remember for, I think, every fan. And I remember seeing the Salah goal, and right away he went to grab the phone, and I like it literally just clicked. I was like, this is going to be huge news. Like this is their Google Pixel partnership that everyone's been talking about. And I remembered. Now looking back through some of the articles, it did happen. I think Van Dijk did something similar when Nunes scored. I can't remember which game, but it was sort of a similar premise. But as soon as it happened, it just clicked. And I think some articles were saying, like, look, people might not even know it's a Google Pixel phone. Like, how is this a good partnership? They're kind of asking a lot of questions around it. But look, like, he's holding up the phone. He's done the selfie so many times, almost over every single game with some of the goal scorers. As soon as he holds it up, I'm like, you couldn't have paid him any amount of money to do this more perfectly. The cop end is just going absolutely insane. He's got the Google Pixels not even covered with his hand. Like he's literally nailed down the branding aspect of it. And I think right away you notice almost everyone has an iPhone. At least I feel like, I don't know what the actual percentage is. And right away, when you don't see the iPhone lens of the camera, that's when I clicked, oh, it's a Google Pixel. And I think that's it. From Google Pixel side of things, whoever was working on it from the brand side has to deserve a promotion at this point, or at least keep their job to say, like, look, this is what we've been trying to get all year. This wasn't necessarily something that was supposed to happen. Liverpool was not supposed to be near the top, never mind winning. I think that even some of the predictions came out after that. Not one of like the big BBC pundits had predicted Liverpool to win the league. So I think just an overall perfect situation for Google Pixel, for Salah, for Liverpool. Like, what a memorable moment. I would love to hear from your end of maybe not being as involved in the actual moment, what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, marketing masterclass, but one, because of the forethought, but two, I mean, sometimes it's just the way it goes. You have the perfect storm, right? So, I imagine that this was discussed before the match. And like you mentioned, other players have done it, but not quite the same level of success or exposure. But to have your best player in the biggest moment of the season doing it, that's kind of why it hits. But, you see this, we've seen this before. You have Pele with the Puma shoe in the World Cup. He ties his shoe before taking the kick. The camera, everybody's watching, Puma shoe. And I think I'd imagine that's what they modeled this idea off of. And I think one of the things in today's age is people don't like being advertised to. Like on social media, there's this big push going away from, kind of like overproduced content, the studio style people aren't as into, versus organic, natural, authentic content, even from advertisers. And this is exactly that, right? It's an authentic moment, so well integrated into the game and into, the excitement. And like you said, he executed it perfectly. Hand placement, all those things, like, as a marketer, way out of your control. And you just got to love when it all comes together like that.
So I was actually reading to your first point there. Apparently it wasn't pre-planned. So there's kind of been a back and forth of whether it was or not. From Salah's side, I think he eventually said that, look, like, I just had the moment. I knew I wanted to take a selfie. The staff member happened to be there. It was like the perfect situation to just grab the phone and take the selfie, which, if that's the case, it's even better, because then it's complete, just like a random occurrence. But even if it was planned, I think either way, the execution was nailed down to perfection.
Yeah, it's awesome. A lot of people can take notes from that. And I think, like, just seeking out opportunities where you can organically and, it's outside of the box, right? This isn't like an ad space that's sold, when Google's working with Liverpool, this wasn't a thing that their partnerships team was like, oh, we can place your logo on the video board. Like, this wasn't a standard offering. This is something unique and inorganic that they came up with. And that kind of creativity wins. So gets people talking.
Yeah. I would love to see how other brands go about. I was speaking with Rob not too long ago on the podcast. He worked for Man City for quite some time in kind of this space. I would say this brand activation space. And we were kind of discussing the importance of, for example, if you have like the walk-in moments where players are in the tunnel before a game with their kind of pre-match outfits on, there's normally a sponsor for that moment. And this can kind of be replicated in many ways, but the importance of having a sponsor that lines up with the moment. Like, if you just have a Pepsi sponsor on that moment, there's no real relevance unless a player is holding a Pepsi bottle or something along those lines. And some clubs have really nailed that down, and others just, it's okay, whoever pays the most for this will just slap their logo on there. Where I think having a moment like this, like, I would say even throughout the year of having the highlights from the Google Pixel, where you'd have the actual club member filming with the Google Pixel some of the key moments right from like the angle right on the net there. Like, that's just a cool angle that maybe would have been posted in the past, but now you're putting a sponsorship on that. And I think finding ways of integrating with partners that align with that, and you can find kind of unique perspectives. I think this was almost a reward of, look, this was a fantastic partnership, an incredible year. And like, this is like the cherry on top. Like, okay, this is something that neither the club paid for, nor did Google or Salah have any involvement, but it's just kind of the extra cherry of like, okay, we did something really incredible here.
Yeah, you mentioned the tunnel walkouts. I'm pretty sure that Nike has sponsored a women's club to do their tunnel walkout. And now,
is that not Barcelona?
is it? I don't know
think
who it was. Maybe it is. But weren't they all? Now they're all wearing Nike, fashion gear. So it's like an amplification of, maybe Nike's designing athletic wear that they're using, but they also have this fashion component, and it's kind of giving an opportunity to highlight that in an organic way. So yeah, I think it's spot on.
I think it was Barcelona with that one, the women's team, and I think then with that one, like what I heard is there's kind of a back and forth of they used to really be iconic for their outfits in terms of like going really glamorous or super casual or whatever that might be, and that was kind of causing attention. Where now it's kind of they're all wearing the same thing, but I think if you can integrate it, like I right away when you said Nike, I thought of Skims, like Skims with the NBA and WNBA, what they're doing there. If you can find an integration that makes sense, where you say, hey, today everyone sort of has to wear Skims as a part of the partnership, and you find a unique approach to that, I think that's interesting. I think if it becomes too out, like just regular and it's not as like exciting, then I think it can kind of die off. But I think if you nail down the execution side of things, I think it can be very, very, very promising.
Yeah, the backlash is interesting. I hadn't seen that yet, but it makes sense. By putting the sponsored component to it, you lose the
the like creative side
of what it used to be. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So guess it wasn't as good as it seemed to be.
We'll go. We're kind of in this sponsorship space. So I think the Chelsea sponsorship. Do you actually know the pronunciation of? I'm going to spell it out for the case of DAMAC, DAMAC or something along those lines. Properties, a real estate company out of, I believe, is Dubai, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
An interesting partnership. I'm part of a sports business group that we were kind of just chatting along this idea. Little bit of a weird timing, I would say, unless they haven't fully announced what the partnership might become. Because I think there's basically only 7 games remaining if Chelsea makes it all the way to the finals of the Conference League. So that's basically the length of this partnership. They've obviously waited all year. I know there's been a ton of talks of trying to get a front shirt sponsor. It didn't end up working out. They kind of went back and forth quite a few times. Now this has come to play where they've got the partnership, but it's really only for the 7 games. Not really sure what the long-term side of things. Obviously, they have the actual real estate project part of it, where they'll be like Chelsea named buildings and so on in a part of the project. So an interesting play. Curious from your side, where do you see this going? How do you see it ended up playing out?
Yeah, I honestly have no clue. I thought it was interesting. I mean, the Chelsea's women's team is dominant, right? I'm pretty sure they've won the top flight 6 years in a row or something. I mean,
I didn't even know that.
They're super good. And so that's also another part of the kit sponsorship. And I think that it got done in time for them to wear it for the clinching game. So maybe that's a piece of it of why it's worth doing it at the end of the season, but it certainly is unusual. Even like if the deal wasn't finalized, like not all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted. Like there gets to a point where in good faith, maybe you start wearing it earlier, knowing that the deal is going to get across the line. Just depends on, nailing out a couple of details. Because, I mean, did you see how long the terms of the deal are for?
For this one specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's till the end of this year. So till the end of the season. Just the end of this season, excluding the Club World Cup. I thought they would at least include the Club World Cup because obviously first time the tournament's happening, big numbers, big names, but literally till the end of the Premier League / European season.
That's I really don't know. It's shocking, right? Yeah, very interesting. I think the other interesting component of it is like just the approach of Saudi sports investment in general. Right? Like you see they started the Saudi Pro League. There's investment in the Premier League. How if they were going to wear it for the Club World Cup, maybe it's a way for them to get into the United States. But yeah, there's a lot of question marks for me, more than I have answers for you.
Yeah, I think the Middle East as a whole right now, it's an interesting perspective of like, I spoke with Yasim not too long ago on the podcast on kind of this, we were talking more Saudi. In this case, this would be Dubai as well. So a little bit of a mix in terms of just the Middle East as a whole, of international investment versus investing locally within their own leagues and their own infrastructure. And I think there's an interesting balance that comes to play. But yeah, with this one, like I think I'm on a similar perspective from your side of things of just weird way of going about it. I hope that there's just a lot of information that hasn't quite come out yet. Maybe this is just the start of a partnership that's a little bit more long term. But I think from the like the real estate and the their project and their side of things, this would be a fantastic way for them to take advantage of a desperate Chelsea and say, hey, look, we've got this real estate project going on. Let's kind of make a big announcement around it, because it's obviously gone through the media now and everything. It's become this like, oh, what is going on? So I think it's got the eyes and the attention that they wanted. And it might just be something where they say, hey, look, we want 7 games. We go front of shirt sponsor. They might win the conference league, whatever that might be. The women's side's doing really well. Take advantage of that. So like a perfect time to just nail that down. Now you've announced the real estate project and you go along with that. I think that's really clever from the sponsor side of things. But I think from Chelsea's side, it's like, okay, maybe the money's there or something that they're seeing makes sense as well. But yeah, it'll be definitely be a little bit of an interesting one to see how it fully plays out.
Yeah, I mean, if they get it for next year, then suddenly it all makes a ton of sense. But yeah, it's interesting.
We'll go. We're getting close to the hour mark here. So do you want to do like sort of a quick fire through the last few?
Yeah,
I think we've really only got the 2 left. So we've got Jason Kidd, I think 2 almost basketball related in some regards. So Jason Kidd buys into Everton. I actually forgot that he had originally also he was a part of the investment group for Oakland Roots and Seoul Soccer Club. So 2 interesting ones there. And it was all a part of 7-7 Partners. I think Everton over the last like year or so has struggled with this kind of investment side of things. They've been going through different owners. It's been a little bit of a difficult or awkward process of getting this over the line. What do you think about this intersection of, I would say, Jason Kidd, for those who don't know, maybe if you want to give a little bit of a background on him and his career, but also a little bit interesting because he's not necessarily one of these like big names coming from the North American sports scene. Obviously, Michael Jordan is known. Yeah, LeBron being a part of Liverpool, or Michael Jordan, or a lot of these bigger names that have kind of come across. Tom Brady, we were talking about with Birmingham. Jason Kidd's not at that level from a name and popularity perspective, but still making incredible plays, I would say, just from a portfolio perspective. Maybe I don't know the details of the actual investment, but portfolio wise is doing really incredible. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on him and his career throughout his actual playing career, and then now and kind of what he's come to do.
Yeah, so obviously great basketball player. He's now the head coach for the Mavericks. Like you said, not like a huge name, but definitely relevant within the sports world. And so that's where I think, like when you talk about these partnerships, you have Giannis invest in soccer pretty heavily, Magic Johnson, LeBron, Tom Brady. Normally there's a parasocial benefit, right? Where the club is getting extra exposure by having this affiliation, and the players, getting to have a pretty strong investment within his sports portfolio. And for Jason Kidd, it makes sense on his end, 100%. He's now branching out in England, English soccer. He clearly sees, is strong, bullish on soccer in general. For Everton, maybe it's just the small boost, try and capture some of the Texas market. But yeah, that one was interesting to me.
And a little bit of awkward timing, I think, especially around the Dallas Mavericks losing Luka. It's like, even if he had that sort of thing, I could like see maybe if Dallas Mavericks were getting close to a strong playoff run or something along those lines with Luka. Like, I think there would be tie-ins there of like, okay, they're kind of capitalizing on the opportunity. I think it could also be something where we're almost overlooking the sense that it could just be something between 7-7 Partners and Jason Kidd, where he's becoming a part of the group in a different format. So definitely a little bit of an odd, like, not something that you expect to see in the news or in the media, but I think a cool perspective, and who knows, I would love to see more of these athletes turned owners. I think that space is interesting. I think you're used to seeing the Tom Bradys, the Michael Jordans, these sort of names, but I think this second tier, I would say, of these athlete turned owners is interesting as well, because you're starting to see like guys coming out of the NBA or the NFL, especially now, I would say in the next few years that are retiring, the amount of money made is like huge. Yeah. So you're able to, even as a not household name, you're still able to make enough to make these investments. and pursue different parts of other sports or entertainment or wherever that might be, that you might just have a personal connection. Like I'm sure Jason Kidd has to have some sort of connection to soccer to be investing this much.
Yeah.
I'd feel bad for him if he's an Everton fan.
How funny would it have been if the investment was in like a Real Madrid though, where Luka played his Euroball at?
It would have been great. Yeah, no, it would have made things even more awkward. Let's stick on the basketball side of things. We'll quickly jump over to Michael Jordan. This, to me, when I first saw it, I was actually blown away because I hadn't like really thought about it in quite some time. But Michael Jordan, I think the big headline is that Jordan has earned over $4.15 billion to date, and Ronaldo still trails with about $2.2 billion. So I know Michael Jordan's obviously got a head start, but he's not necessarily coming from an age of basketball in terms of his playing career where that would have given him the boost. It's really all post-career. Obviously, an incredibly smart move with the Jordan brand being under Nike and so on. I'm not sure if you have any points from your side in terms of like the financials around him in the Jordan deal and what they've been able to do, or just your perspective on the overall deal.
Right, the deal's from 1984, and the reason I know this is because I'm big on the personal branding space and just this athlete endorsement. Jordan's business accounts for just over 13% of Nike's wholesale, business arm, right? So think about how much money that is. So much. And I think it just talks, I think for other athletes that are watching this, and you can start to see how what he has done is kind of serves as an inspiration for some of these other athletes. You see like the lifetime deals with LeBron and Steph. You start to see a lot of athletes trying to start their own brands. Messi's got his drink brand now. There are some other ones. It's becoming a big thing. Mm-hmm. And it's because he's kind of demonstrated how like all these athletes have great, strong personal brands, but being able to tie it into a business that so well incorporates with his personal brand just, takes off. And even now where he's obviously relevant as one of the best basketball players ever, but not as relevant as when he was playing, but still, holds this massive piece of real estate in the basketball world. So pretty cool.
I think so. To put a number on what that 13% is, last year Jordan Brand generated $6.6 billion in Nike revenue. So I think that's just to get an idea of any percentage that he's taking off of that is a fairly large amount of money. And I think when you're talking about this intersection of athletes, but I think this can be taken to anyone with a following. Really, one of the first steps is, okay, how can we maximize this following to the full extent? So really build on the following. You're seeing your Ronaldos with like, I don't know, what is he at? 500 plus million followers on Instagram, so on. Even from like the content side of things, you really want to push and make that as big as possible. But then I think the next step is, okay, if you're a content creator, you don't want to rely on the monetization of YouTube or TikTok or Instagram. And as an athlete, you don't want to rely on the weekly paycheck from your team because one day your body's going to give up. And the reality is you can't play at that level forever. So I think both are kind of in a similar sense of like, okay, we know this is going to limit us eventually. So how can we connect our name to something and actually invest our capital into something that's going to become that like long living brand that will live hopefully past us? And I think what comes to mind is not only Ronaldo with CR7 and what he's done with his brand, but like the first that came to mind for me was KSI and Logan Paul with Prime. Like that is really something where they just said, okay, look, we're going to partner with someone that understands the drink space. We're just going to make it the number one hydration drink in the world because they're arguably, I think at the time, especially when they were having the boxing matches, they were doing all that. They were basically the two biggest names, the biggest name in the US, the biggest name in the UK. And I think they've kept that status. You look at Logan Paul with his partnership in the WWE has nailed that to perfection, especially with the inclusion of Prime. You're seeing Prime everywhere now across the UFC, across the biggest soccer teams, basketball teams, you name it in the world. And then KSI with the Sidemen and what they've done with the charity match, with their Netflix documentaries, like these two just continually succeed with where they're at. And this has now become a multi-billion-dollar company that they can now sell on, take a decent percentage of that, and just keep running with whatever they have in mind. I know they have they're partnered with Mr. Beast and Lunchley, and Mr. Beast another fantastic example in this space. But I think this is a really exciting opportunity. And I think an important one for athletes to see now, that no matter what level you're at, you can do something like this. Obviously, Jordan and Jordan Brand being the highest level of that, but you can even start something on your own. It's just a matter of putting your face and your name behind that. And we both know the importance of personal brand, I think, is key in that space.
I mean, the other top athletes haven't had the success as Jordan, but I mean, LeBron, Curry, Messi all made more money last year from endorsements and business ventures than they did from playing. And they're all making 50 million plus from playing. So you definitely seen people that have copied it. I feel like the one person that maybe has the potential to rival what Jordan's done is Tiger with Sunday Red. You know, he was a little late to the jump. He was with Nike for so long. First, Jordan kind of stuck it out with Nike, but he's branched off and started his own apparel brand that is rapidly growing. And how can, as he phases out of the playing, kind of continue his legacy and relevance within the space through that brand. So that'll be interesting to watch.
I think if you look, so I have the list of the top 10 highest paid athletes of all time. If you kind of carry on scrolling there, so you've obviously got Michael Jordan, then Tiger Woods, as you just mentioned there, and Sunday Red, another fantastic example. Cristiano Ronaldo, he's already got his movie studio now on top of everything else that he's a part of. LeBron and his Nike deal, I'm curious to see that's become a lifetime deal. I'm surprised he didn't necessarily go more of his own route in terms of building, but I think the LeBron James legacy with Nike is still there. Then you got Messi with Adidas, and obviously Moss that he started as well now, and I think he has a few other ventures. Arnold Palmer, I'm not too sure what would he have alongside him.
I mean, he has Arnold Palmer is
that's
brand,
what I was. That's right? The only thing I was thinking. Yeah,
they have an invitational that's on the tour, a signature event, and he's got his hands in a ton of different things behind the scenes as well.
So it's interesting to see three golfers in the top 10. Then you've got David Beckham, obviously probably the best PR example of an athlete besides some of the Michael Jordans and so on. And then Roger Federer has On Cloud, which has become massive now with what he's done there. Also kind of leaving the Nike scene. And then Floyd Mayweather just being another name that has absolutely killed it in the sports space. So definitely interesting to see that intersection of athlete owners and what they've been able to do.
No football players on here. No American football players on here, which brings in an interesting wayside thing that we could go down of the personal branding and marketing of athletes that you can see their face during the game versus the ones that are wearing helmets. Kind of interesting to think about.
No, it's true. I'm even thinking okay, you look at the biggest name, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, but neither have really hit that space, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Huh. And then the last kind of topic that I wanted to go over here, when I saw this, I was like, okay, is this are we April 1st again or what is going on here? We've seen the celebrity boxing scene, I would say, has become quite popular. We brought it up, obviously, KSI, Logan Paul. You've seen some athletes kind of do the crossover. And none are coming to mind at the moment. But MMA is a whole different beast in terms of, I think, Logan Paul especially has been inclined to maybe go the MMA route with a few different guys, but has never actually happened because I think they know what the MMA actually takes in terms of the toll on your body. But Patrice Evra out of nowhere, another name who I would say is not necessarily that tier one, but has killed the PR side of things. His Instagram videos, that's really the only reason I follow him is for that entertainment. He's absolutely killed it. And now moving into the MMA space with PFL. I would love to, I did a lot of research on this to see kind of what that deal looked like and what was going on. It didn't seem like it was much more than just him fighting. I thought there was maybe an ownership perspective or something where he would kind of make use out of the PR stunt that it is. But I'd love to hear from your side of things, your thoughts and where you see this going.
Yeah, I think PR stunt is the right word. And I hope that, for all these guys, it's hard translating transitioning out of sport, right? You're playing at such a high level of competition. I hope that this is filling that for him. But I think from a fan and from a consumer perspective, there's no way he's really competing with a professional, right? In my mind. But yeah, hopefully it's entertaining at least. That I feel like is what they're going for. And hopefully he's enjoying it. That's the best I can say.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an awkward one. I saw he was on FaceTime with Khabib the other day. Khabib says he wants to train him, so there's he's got it. At least he's nailed down the training side of things. I think as a competitor, there was kind of the classic. Okay, yeah, he's going to fight Luis Suarez. Not sure Suarez is going to come over from Miami anytime soon to fight Patrice Evra in the PFL, but I think at least from at least from the PFL side, I think an interesting move to kind of get into a new space, right? I think they get the publicity of having such a big name, and obviously this has gone all over the media and so on. So I think that's interesting, and I think it doesn't necessarily have to be him fighting against another MMA professional. I think he can easily become a celebrity MMA fight, I guess, at this point. Yeah. So I think it's there. The only struggle that I see is boxing is maybe easier to translate to as an amateur, in terms of you're not having this like multi-sport sport within itself. Like MMA, you've got jiu-jitsu, you've got karate, you've got kickboxing, you've got all these boxing, you've got all the different elements. Yeah, wrestling. So you have all these elements tied into one, and you have to be quite good at all of those, or at least an expert in one. And I think that's where but I'm curious, like am I going to be watching it? Absolutely. Like if it's available on something that I watch, I'm going to be watching it, or I'll be seeing the social media clips. So I think just another cool space to see people innovating in, which is at least exciting from that side of things.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to think of it from the PFL standpoint. And also, I think you're spot on. It has to be another celebrity, right? That makes it easier to wrap your head around.
Or he just gets his ass kicked for however long an MMA fight is, which I think either way would be entertaining. So we'll wait to see on that one. But Ethan, I appreciate your time. I know we've gone quite a bit over here, which was maybe a little unexpected. I wasn't sure. This is a little bit of a new idea in terms of what we're doing. If anyone is listening this far, if you have any feedback, you want to hear this more, if you want to hear Ethan come on more, let us know. And hopefully we'll get this done in the future again. But Ethan, thanks again. If you have any last words from your end, and then we can wrap things up.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always fun. I think that's why we go so long. We can just yap forever. So appreciate you having me back.
And Ethan Talks Sport on Instagram and TikTok. If you guys want to hear him yap even more, that's the place to see it. I've been loving the videos so far. So keep killing it there. Ethan, thanks again for your time, and we'll speak soon.
I appreciate it. See you, man.